Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm really glad you're here. And it's been an interesting week in America. I don't want to talk about it because this is not a show about politics. But anyway, it's been a not funny week. Anyway, you know what? Something just weird happened when Simon started the show. A little pop-up came on my phone about YouTube, the show starting on YouTube, and I clicked it and it started playing on my TV. How did that happen? I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. I hope everybody's doing great. I have a great show lined up for you today. Simon, sorry, I'm off the slide. Simon is remote at a friend's house, so that's pretty cool that he can run the show anywhere in the world, I guess. Simon goes. Anyway, my guest today is Byron Tardif. He's a principal program manager, and he's going to be talking about the Azure App Platform and App Services. I'm really excited about this because I need to get back into that. I've kind of been out of it for a while, and I want to see what's new and exciting in the app service world. And so I've been looking forward to it. Show 55, May 7th. It's May already. I can't believe it. What happened to the last 4 months? I don't even know. Hey, John's here every week. Man, thanks, John. Have I sent you anything, John, like books or something? Do I owe you? I should owe you something for being on the show every week. Anyway, let's get started. I'm going to keep doing this while the war's going on. I'm sorry to irritate you, but, we need to think about our friends and fellow humans in Ukraine dealing with this really terrible war back there. And right now it looks like Russia's gearing up to do some big thing so they can say something great on Monday on Victory Day, which is their independence from Germany. So they're celebrating their independence while taking away the independence from another country. Yeah, way to go, Russia. Anyway, send your thoughts and prayers to the people in Ukraine. If you can support them, no matter how that is, please do that. They need our help in every way that we can help them. And I have a selfish motive. I've been to the Ukraine, as you can see, and I've been wanting to go back ever since. I had just an awesome time in the Ukraine. I loved it, and I've been wanting to go back ever since. And now I can. So I want things to get better so I can go back, and speak there and enjoy the country before, I retire from the software world. So let's get them safe. Also, I'm going to Australia next month. Yoo-hoo! I'm so excited. I'm going to Australia for the very first time in my life. And I'll be speaking at NDC. I've been trying to speak at this conference in Australia for years and years, and they finally picked me up. So I'm super excited to go there. And so if you live in Australia or know somebody who lives in Australia, please let them know I'm coming the week of June 20th. And I hope they'll go to NDC. But if they are in the Melbourne area, I would like to meet them and hang out with anybody. I don't know if I'll ever get back there again. So I want to do as much as I can in the week that I'm there. So please tell your friends. I just released this last Sunday the .NET 6 version of Spargin. I'm super excited about this, my open source software that I've had around since the .NET 2 days, actually. And I've worked it's taken me a really long time, as you can tell, to get this version out because I did a lot of changes. I implemented fluent validation for parameter checking, which I'll talk about in a sec. And the lots of other stuff. I'm a little behind on my benchmarking DLL because I'm rewriting that too to make benchmarking even easier using benchmark.net. So I hope you'll go check it out. Just go to spargin.net. And you can go check out the repository or just download the NuGet packages and just use it. And speaking of that, my latest article on C# Corner is called Coding Faster with .NET Tips Spargin 6, Validating Arguments Made Easy. So I completely changed my argument validation in Spargin, and now it uses Fluent validation, which I love. If you haven't used it, it's great. And I basically, my entire open source software, all of Spargin uses this Fluent validation now. So I hope you go check out the article, and I hope you go check out the NuGet packages and or the repository. And if you want something added to Spargin, please do a pull request. No one's ever asked to add anything. So I've got over 60,000 downloads and no one's asked for anything. So do that. All right. I'd like to welcome my guest. Byron Tardif is a principal program manager with Microsoft. Byron has worked in Windows Server, App Fabric, Windows Server, Azure Service Bus, Azure App Service, Azure Functions, Azure Static Webapp, and Azure Container Apps. There's more to his bio you can read on my blog post, but welcome, Byron.
Hello, Dave. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here with you.
How's it going?
It's going great.
Good. Whereabouts do you live?
I live in Redmond. I'm about 2 miles away from campus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I like short commutes.
Yeah. Well, me too. My commute's from my bedroom to my living room. So
there you go.
That I save so much gas, which I'm really happy about right now when it's over $6 a gallon in California right now. So I'm glad, which I have to get gas the next time I go in my car. Unfortunately, I'm going down to all the way down before I have to get gas again. Because the last time I got gas was before the war started. So.
Oh wow! Yeah.
I had the cheaper gas back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're gonna get sticker shock for real.
Yeah, and especially in California. California has the highest. Oh, San Diego has the highest gas prices in the entire country. Don't ask me why. It's always been like that. Even worse than Hawaii. We've always had horrible gas prices in San Diego. California is bad enough, but it's worse than San Diego.
Hey, but you have the best weather in the country, so.
That's true. Yes, we do have the best weather in the country. I love living here, and I love living like a mile from the beach, so nice. Yeah, I can't complain too much. I recall getting, John said, I recall getting gas less than 50 cents. Yeah. When I was a kid, that reminded me of when I was a kid and, a little kid, and I saw like cars were like $2,000. I was going, how can I ever afford that? You can't even get a motorcycle for that price anymore. Well, look at computers cost more than $2,000. Geez. Yep. John, I do owe you books. Yes. You know what? I made a note with a reminder with Alexa to do that this weekend, John. So I feel bad that I owe like 3 or 4 people stuff, and sending you stuff is some reason I'm really bad at following up with. So I did remember this week, and I kind of felt bad, John. So I'll be sending you that stuff this coming week. Promise. Hopefully, if I don't forget again. That's why Alexa is great. It reminds me of stuff. So anyway, so everybody, make sure you ask your questions. Please put them in the chat, and they'll come up, and I can ask them with Byron. If you're interested about app services, this is the guy to ask. So start asking. Before we get into, what is, because what I always, have guests talk about is what they're excited about. And so before we get into what you are excited about with app services these days, I kind of I thought about this morning, maybe just do a really short, like what is Azure App Service, and how is that different than like a web service or, a web API or something like that. So.
Right. So when you think of the cloud, there's basically 3 big categories. There's infrastructure as a service, which is give me the VM and, I'll put whatever I want in there, but I own the maintenance, updating of the VM, monitoring of the VM, making sure that it's alive, etc. Then you have platform as a service, that's where App Service fits, where we control the platform. So we make sure that the VM is always up and alive, If anything happens to it, we give you a new one, and hopefully you don't even notice that. And then you bring your code, and that's all you're responsible for. We update the OS and any interleaving layers between that and your code. And then the final category is software as a service, where things like Gmail or Outlook.com, where you're using a service, you're not publishing any code to it, you're just consuming it.
Right.
So App Service and the App Plat is precisely you can think of it as the platform as a service component of Azure.
And those app services are in a shared VM, right?
You have the multiple models, right? So if you're on the free tier, that's what we call high density hosting, where we do have, let's say, if you have, let's say, Coke and Pepsi, they could both be running on the same VM.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to the paid tiers, in which case you have a dedicated VM that is for you, where you're putting all of your code, but there's some shared infrastructure around it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the load balancing that is in front of that VM is going to be shared with everybody else in that unit of scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go even bigger than that, which would be an app service environment. In this case, both the common infrastructure as well as the VM is completely dedicated to you. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about scale within the cloud, we call this thing stamps. That's a borrowed term from, I think, SharePoint. When you used to do a SharePoint deployment on premise, you would do a stamp of SharePoint. So it's kind of like the minimum viable, workable piece of infrastructure that then can grow from there. Mm-hmm. There's limits to how many VMs you can have in a stamp, and that's like the physical limits of the Azure Compute Fabric. And whenever we hit that limit, we need to basically open a new stamp. Mm-hmm. So app service environments, to make the story short, app service environments is like having your own dedicated stamp of app service.
And I assume that app services can also be located in different geo regions too, right? Automatically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So app service is, I think we're like between ring 0 and ring 1, which means it needs to be present in a data center before that data center is open to the public for Azure. So any data center or any Azure region will have app service there from day one when it's open to customers.
Cool. So I had two questions. I forgot one of them. So I'll go to my question that I wrote down. So you stated that you wrote like the first app service. Is that true?
So yeah,
what was that?
It was just let's get into how I got there. My job when I joined App Service about 10, 11 years ago, I was in charge of deployments. So that is the part of, we have our code that is the App Service code, and we need to get it up and running on Azure in one of those stamps that I described. Mm-hmm. And we were going through, this is like probably 3 or 4 generations of the deployment mechanisms that we use today. And we were going through it, and it was like peeling an onion, where every time that you did a deployment, we would hit a certificate issue, or we would hit a storage account issue, or some credential mismatch, and we would go fix that and then turn it around until finally, like, I'm gonna say a week before we were gonna go public preview, we got the first public announceable deployment ready, and we were all together. I think this was in building 18. There's another funny anecdote about that, but I'll come back to that. And somebody flips the switch and the thing goes live, and my job was to go and actually publish a website on the first public footprint of App Service, and it was literally just a GIF saying that we were live. It was like the Frankenstein.
Yeah. Hello world.
Yeah, hello world. But that was like the first ever web app on App Service. We were called websites at that time. It was Azure Websites.
So I assumed this was the question I forgot. So I assumed that Microsoft is dogfooding App Service. So what are kind of can you tell us some of the things that actually Microsoft runs off of App Service?
Oh man,
if you know?
there's
Well,
a
it's
lot of
probably a
stuff.
lot,
So
right?
yeah, like we've gotten to the point where app services within the top 3 or 4 most used services in Azure in terms both of how many apps are actually on the platform as well as the revenue. So, I think more interesting is talking about not just what Microsoft is doing, but like other people are doing.
Yeah.
So, for example, for Microsoft, something that is very near and dear to everybody at Microsoft is all of the performance platform runs on App Service. So that's how we get our bonuses, etc. All of the learning platform. So whenever you're taking a course, all of that is hosted on App Service. I don't know if this is still true, but the Microsoft blog used to be running on App Service, and I know that because I happened to be on a servicing call. I was like on the SME in charge when the movie was released, and all of a sudden the site is going down because there's too much traffic. And I'm sitting in my house, in my parents' house in LA, and I get a phone call while I'm literally in pajamas and eating cookies, saying that North Korea is attacking us. And it was just, it wasn't that. It was just the news was so big that everybody was hitting the site, and they had to scale the database so that it was, resistant to the actual organic traffic that was coming in. But, yeah.
Cool. So now that no questions from the audience yet, the one thing I did want to say that John wrote, what was it? You have a 4-year-old in the house, so you know about tracking, sidetracking and forgetting. Yeah. That never goes away, John, even when they leave. Because when they leave, you're older, and you have more dead brain cells, I guess, and so
it's permanent damage.
It's permanent damage from your kids. I have 2 kids and 3 grandkids, so I have a lot of damage. Fun Saturday. So now that we got my questions out of the way, so what's new and exciting in App Services world that you can share, even if there's something new that's coming with .NET 6, if anything? I mean, not .NET 6, .NET 7.
Yeah, so, I figured we could split this in 2 ways. One is, how do we use .NET to build App Service? And I think there's a couple interesting things to talk about there. And then, what are we doing to deliver .NET experiences to customers? So which one do you want to go into first?
Either one. First one sounds good with me.
Okay, so one of the recent things that we did with .NET 6, specifically .NET 6, is we took all of our front ends. So that is when traffic comes into Azure, it comes through like a common endpoint, and then it gets distributed to the specific service that is running on Azure that traffic is dedicated for. And if you're running a VM, then you basically need to create your own load balancing in front of that so that you can have scale out. With App Service, that load balancing tier is part of the platform. And before, it used to be the App Service team basically grew from a bunch of people doing IIS and Windows Server. So we grabbed the pieces of technology that we were familiar with, and we kind of like grabbed the hammer and made them work for App Service. So in the front end tier, there was a lot of ARR and a lot of the HTTP.sys that comes with IIS. And one of the problems that we had with that was that it's written in unmanaged code, and that a lot of the core DLLs that come with that are shipped with Windows. That means that we're tied to the Windows release cycle. And if we're on an older version of Windows and there's a change in the newer version of Windows, we need to beg and plead for them to get backported into the one that we're using so that we can then publish and deploy. So even though we had a good working service, and this is something that is doing, like when we're talking about the front end of App Service, we're talking trillions of requests per day, globally, right? So this is a very core infrastructure piece that if anything happens to it, every one of our customers is going to be complaining about it.
Yeah.
So it it's like the analogy that we have is changing the tires of a car while you're going 60 miles an hour on the highway and not stopping, right? So a lot of the work that we did over the last year is taking Crestals and YARP and moving all of this front-end code to be C#6, or sorry, .NET 6 and C#, using Crestals and using YARP, and replacing every component along the way so that everything is managed code. And key things that came out is we were, even without doing any optimization, because like if you ask me what is the most level of compatibility that you can get, is bug level compatibility, meaning that when you replace a piece of code, you still have the same bugs that you had with the previous one. And
right.
That's one of those where you get into this philosophical discussion of, is it a bug or is it a feature? It depends on what customer is using it how.
Yeah.
But anyways, going back to perf, even without doing any perf specific optimization, we got about a 60% bump up on like perf versus resources at the front end, which was awesome. It means that we can tolerate even bigger scale.
But I just want to stop for just a sec. Those of you waiting to go to .NET 6, this is why you go to .NET 6. Even .NET 5 was a big performance increase, because I had some guests on my show and I was talking about it, because I have a code performance book out there and I'm working on the new one, and just moving your code to .NET 6 with no changes, you'll get a perf increase. And so those companies that are waiting to move, this should be priority to me, especially if you're looking to go to the cloud, because you have to remember that everything in the cloud you're being charged for. So the longer it takes, the more you're being charged, pretty much. It depends on the service, but a lot of the services, that's the way it is, right? So you have to be concerned about performance, and just going to .NET 6, you'll get it, right? You had the 60% increase, you said, right?
Yeah, and that was like literally zero perf optimization.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, all good. And then the other important benefit that we got is that we went from having maybe 4 people in the world that could service that managed code to now it's an open source project that we can contribute to. We can get back. We have the whole .NET community using this and contributing back, and also the release cycle is much faster. Like if we need to patch something, we wait a month. We don't need to wait for another version of Windows to come out and do all of that. So that is something that is like very exciting for the people that are working inside of App Service, because we get the agility now. We can do a lot more than we couldn't do before, and that will translate to customer features in the coming future. So there's a couple of things that we're working on, and I'm going to caveat this that this is coming in the next couple of months. I don't know exactly when it's going to land, but it's something that we're working on, and it's one of our number one asked features, which is gRPC support. So
I was going to ask you about that.
Today we do have the web gRPC. But the work that we did in the front ends and all the way down to the workers, there's a little proxy that runs on every VM that basically connects the worker to the front end. It's allowing us to do end-to-end gRPC on all 4 scenarios on Linux. So that's something that we're looking forward. We're basically doing the work right now so that it can roll out in the near future. Other things that are interesting, also enabled by this work, is custom error pages. So today, if you hit a 404 on your web app, you get it's a generic error page from App Service saying it's a 404. Go figure out what you did wrong. But now you're going to be able to brand it and put whatever like the GitHub has that 404 error page where it's like, these are not the droids that you're looking for. So you will be able to do stuff like that. The other interesting one is we're looking to support gzip and broadly compression all the way down to the worker. So if you want to compress the output of your code, you should be able to turn that on, and it should just be transparent.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
John said that he's moving Silverlight to Blazor. I didn't know Silverlight worked anymore. What version of Visual Studio do you have to use, John, to do Silverlight? Because I don't know if that's even supported in 2022. Well, there's no workloads for it, I don't think. That's for sure. So
here's one. How you can tell how old somebody or how long somebody has been working in Azure if they remember the Silverlight portal for Azure.
Well, I used to ask people what was like the code name of WCF, you know, and I don't think most people know that. I had a couple questions when you were talking. One is, when was App Service actually released? I don't remember now.
I think the GA was about 10 years ago. So it was built 10 years ago. I don't remember if it was built those days or if it was still PDC.
No.
But yeah, it's been 10 years.
And you were talking about, you have to work with a Windows team, and you were saying that, these run on a VM. Well, what version of Windows does it actually run on? I was curious. Do you guys run it on?
So the front ends are on, I'm going to say 2018. I think that's what it's on.
Windows 2018?
Yeah, or let me double check.
I feel your pain, John. I'm sorry, John, you're still stuck on Visual Studio 2013.
Yeah, Windows Server 2019. That's what the front ends are on.
Windows Server 2019. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, everything is Windows Server. We don't do Windows Client.
Yeah. I figured that. Yeah. I forget because I don't keep track of the server numbers anymore, because I don't use them very much, especially doing cloud stuff. What else is exciting about app services?
Well, the next thing is starting with .NET 5, we did day 0 support when .NET 5 went GA. And that is something that we did through this mechanism called early access. So what that means is that the moment that we have .NET Conf and we announce, hey, .NET 5 and then .NET 6 is going GA, you could literally follow along on the keynote and run the same GA bits locally as well as on App Service. And now with .NET 7, what's going to happen is, in the next month or so, you're going to start seeing the preview, probably starting with preview 5, preview 6, depending on how things line up, where you can start running those preview bits on the cloud as well as on your local box. And this is something that we built by working really close with the .NET team. It basically it's me sitting in the .NET release cycle and making sure that we're getting the bits ahead of time so that we can do the cloud deployment. Is not, you cannot just blast 5 million VMs with .NET in one day, right? We need a couple of days, and we need to follow what's called safe deployment practices, which means that we go to a certain region, we wait for a little bit, go to the next region, wait for a little bit, and make sure that we're not breaking something,
bringing everybody down. Yeah,
right. And while this is something that we built with .NET, it's something that we're also bringing to all of the other languages that we support. So we're working on getting the infrastructure in place so that we can do this for Node, for Python, for PHP, etc.
Oh, cool. Since no one's asking questions, I guess I'm just going to ask questions. The unfortunate part of the time of my show is that the majority of my audience is not in America, and so they're sleeping right now, or they're partying, like my producer, and so
some producers we know
they'll watch the show in the next coming days. So the numbers always go up like that on Monday and go up. So I don't get a lot of questions. So what are some apps, the well-known apps that run on App Service?
So if anybody has bought anything from Walmart on Walmart.com,
Wow,
that
we use
is,
App Service.
Walmart pretty much uses every service in Azure.
Really?
I would say, like, if you give them a menu, they're like, yeah, give me one of everything. But there's definitely pieces of Walmart that are running on App Service. Like the other, like, I think this is one of my favorite scenarios. The Canadian elections, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, every time that there's an election coming up, they blast some infrastructure on App Service. And the last time I helped them with this, we were doing something like 5 million concurrent users, over 1 billion requests per second.
Wow.
And it was all basically brought up on infrastructure that was alive for maybe 36 hours. So that is the power of the cloud, right? So you go and you create 300 VMs in one region, 300 VMs in another region, 300 VMs in another region. You have load balancing in front of that, using things like Azure Front Door, so you have like that one common endpoint. When you know that scale is coming, you don't need to use autoscale. You just pre-scale everything to the max. And then as the time zones move forward, you can see the traffic moving from one region to the next region to the next region. And then by the time you're wrapping up on you bring everything down, and you only paid for the hours that you actually consumed it. Right. So this is an example of a truly massive application, and it's like kudos to the CDC team, to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation team. Because they had their main site go down, but the election results side was up. So
Azure.
Yep. And one of the things that happened was people could see the results in the app faster than the reporters on TV could talk to them. So it's that close to real time.
Well, I'm gonna have to watch next time. I have to find that website and check it out. That sounds pretty cool. And that's, that reminded me of, I don't know if this still happens anymore, but Comic-Con is in San Diego every year, right? Well, except for during COVID, of course. And every year it goes down, and I use that as a kind of a teaching tool when I talk to people going, Comic-Con only has high traffic one day of the year, one day. Right? Because all their tickets are sold like within hours, right? And then that's it, and so every year would go down, and every year I would tweet, should have been using Azure, and but this is why, because, and even this one company I worked at, they had a pretty flat traffic all year, right? But their major days of the year, and why they hired me to solve some of their memory and performance problems, was Black Friday and Cyber Monday, right? Where we were processing like 50,000 transactions a second, but it's only those 2 days. The rest of the days, it's pretty flat. And so you have to code to that, right? And you have to put your stuff. And they weren't in the cloud yet. Part of the work I was doing is to help them go to the cloud. But that's why you need the cloud, is for that, right? Because the cloud will automatically upscale and allow you to take care of that traffic and then go back down, right? And that's the beauty of the cloud.
I would say as long as you're properly architected.
Right.
And that's the trick.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell you some stories. Like we've had, it happens from time to time when there's some major event that happens, that they bring up this application that is specific to this event, and the app falls on its face. And I kid you not, this is a thing that has happened in real life. We get called into the support, we look at it, and they're using something like a file-based database where that's not going to scale beyond one instance.
No.
So there is an art to architecting for the cloud. You need to be able to think with scaling horizontally, not just give me a bigger box, right? You need to be able to think of, my app is stateless, or the state is externalized, and every component that my app is talking to is also scaling.
Yeah.
That was the example of the database, right?
Right.
If you're pulling from a database and your web tier is scaled to 300 instances and they're all trying to connect at the same time.
One database. Yeah.
Yeah, something's going to choke. So making sure that you have an understanding of the full stack.
Yeah.
And here's where like the art part comes, where not every application needs to be super architected with multiple tiers of resiliency and caching.
Sure.
But the ones that really need it. Right. So it's where do you put the dial and how much is too much?
Yeah. And that's, that's why I talk about, NoSQL databases like Cosmos DB, because they allow you to overcome this issue. And that brings up a question. I haven't paid a lot of attention to SQL Server lately because I'm just not interested in it much anymore. I'm more interested in Cosmos DB and things like that. So is SQL Server, I mean, is Azure SQL whatever, can that be also geolocated too, like Cosmos DB? Or
yeah, I mean, you need to do some work. It's not like Cosmos where it's just like out of the box, just basically move the slider from one end to the other. But some of the things that you can do with SQL that I would say pretty easy and will save you a lot of headache is you can have a hot and cold scenario where all of your writes go to one specific region, but your reads can be distributed. Because most web apps, the ratio of reads to writes is going to be heavily skewed towards reads. So it's something like 80-20.
Right.
So 20% of the load is going to be writes and 80% of the load is going to be reads. So if you can scale out your read capability very easily and not very costly to do that. And you don't write any. Your SQL is no different, right? It's just
it's the infrastructure that's different. I love this comment from John Simon, if you want to put it up. A local sci-fi convention lost registered user list. They did not know who was the registered users. That's another reason to have the cloud. I was saying, sorry, with this many nerds and no one backed up the data. That is more common than I would want to think. I would want to admit that I hear about, right? Is there's no, well, not only there's no backup, but some people do backups, but they've never tested the recovery part of it, right? And so sometimes that doesn't work, right? And so, And so John also asked,
I was laughing at the next comment from John, which is, can we use SQL Light on Azure? Sure, if you want to give me some more white hair and...
So there's your answer, John. Also, I don't know, because I know prices are, fluent kind of, but, there is a free tier, right? And do you know the general cost of the other tiers, or that you just can't say it because of the configuration and everything?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on pricing. Is, like you said, it's very dynamic. The best resource for that is there's the Azure pricing calculator, where you can literally punch in, I'm using this resource and I'm using this other resource and this particular combination, and it gives you, a reasonable estimation of your price. But yeah, like you said, there's the free tier, and you can do enough with the free tier. You're obviously not going to be able to run a production site on the free tier, but you can, POC and test and see if the code that you've written is going to run on Azure. And the other important thing is that Azure App Service billing is by the minute. So, if you want to test something out on a paid tier that you don't necessarily get access on a free tier, you can scale out, do the test or whatever you want to do, turn the feature off, and then scale back down to free. So if you're in the tire kicking or figuring things out, that's something very, very practical. Like, I don't know, what's the best way to share the link to the pricing calculator? Should I just tweet it out?
You can put it in the private chat, and then Simon will put it in the chat. John says
There you
he's
go.
got white hair and a bald spot. Well, John, you need to update your image, because I don't see that in your image.
No, I think that's because he's been using Silverlight for too long.
Oh, and John, about your you need, I need to send you a 6-pack. If we ever meet in person, I will buy you as much beer as you want. How about that? I'm not going to send alcohol across this. I don't want to get in trouble with that stuff. But I'll buy you. Where do you live, John? I forget. I definitely want to buy John some beer, because he asks great questions on the show. There you go. Simon's put up. Can you put that on the screen too, Simon? Or did you and I missed it? Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
so
some call outs that I want to do about this is if you are working with an enterprise, you can get what are called dev and test subscriptions. Not all of people know that, but they come at a discount. So, it's not you won't pay the price per resource that you see there. So it basically falls into the enterprise agreement, and you can get Azure subscriptions at a discount for dev and test purposes.
Oh, that's good.
The other thing is that App Service supports committed billing. So if you're going to say, I'm going to consume this much in a year, or I think if you go to 5 years, that's where you get like a 20% discount. And the other important thing, which is not always obvious, is that pricing varies by region. There's some regions that are more expensive than others. So that's just something to look out for.
Yeah, cool. Oh, John lives in Chicago. Yeah, that's right. You said that, John. I've only been to the airport in Chicago. I can't believe I say that, because, I'm a huge music fan, and, the blues and stuff came out of Chicago, and I've always wanted to go there just to check out the clubs there. And so hopefully I'll get there someday to speak, and I can go check out Chicago and buy John some beer. There, I've said it to the whole world. I made a commitment.
The last time I was in Chicago was when the Blackhawks won the NHL, and I was watching in a bar, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. So before we run out of time, I kind of wanted to ask you something about that you said in the extra stuff you sent me, and you said your left side of your brain owns the bring your own code and bring your own container workloads for Azure and App Services. So I kind of want to ask you, because I'm left and right brained, and one of the best questions I ever got asked was actually in India, where I answered the question talking about that. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, what do you do to kind of keep both halves working with each other and communicating properly with each other?
So I would tell you it's a challenge. I would say, just to give people a little bit of context, when I say my left and my right brain is, I think I always get this one's flip-flop because I'm also supposed to be dyslexic. I think the right brain is the one that has to do with creative work, whereas the left brain has to do with analytic work. Yeah. So part of what I own as part of my role in App Service is I own all of the user experience in the portal. So when you go to portal.azure.com and you're interacting with functions, web apps, parts of Logic apps, the new container apps, static web apps, all of that is coming from one of my teams. And the thing that I love about working with that space is the design process of, we come with a bunch of APIs, and then how do we translate that to something that is actually useful and understandable for the customer, right? And specifically, one of the things that I like to do there is I don't like to ship what we call shipping the org board, where you see the clear delineation of, okay, this part of the experience is owned by this particular team or person, and this part of the experience is owned by somebody else. And when you as a customer come in and you're trying to do something, you need to context switch like 17 times if you have something like that.
Yeah.
And one of the examples that I can put out is we have the Web Plus database templates, where if you go create, like, I would say something like 95% of people that are creating a web app today are going to end up going and creating a database. Yeah. And how do you do that securely so that, you know, the only publicly accessible endpoint is the web app, and the database is not publicly accessible, but accessible to the web app.
Right.
And if you know what you're doing, and, you know, I've been using Azure since it was called Project Red Dog, it takes you 20 minutes to do something like that. Yeah. You create the web app, you create the database, you create the VNet, you create the subnets, then you go inject the resources into the corresponding subnets, and you create private link that makes them talk to each other. Then you need to get the connection string and pray to God that you remember the password that you set on the database, and then you add it to the web app, and then things can talk to each other, right? And if you're lost in that, I get you. So we have this experience.
You lost me like 30 seconds ago. So
yeah, we have this experience that literally does that for you, right? So you tell me, you know, I want to do a C# project, ASP.NET Web API, and we say, okay, good. So you're most likely going to be using SQL Azure. Let me go create something like that for you. And out of the box comes that thing that is secure by default. You don't have to think about it. You can go dissect it to understand what's going on, but you end up with like the best practices already there for you to use. So that's, you know, an example of the right side of my brain. The left side of my brain is I work with the literally the guts of the product. So, you know, this is where we're looking at. Have you heard of Mariner?
No.
Okay, so Mariner is the secure, what is this thing called? So imagine that you're creating a Linux distribution where every component of that distribution is built and security audited before it gets pulled into the release. And that is a project that Azure is doing for all first-party services that are running on Linux. So this is basically and you can look for it. This is like open source. Look for Mariner on the Microsoft GitHub. So this is like a secure, I forget what the name of this thing is. Secure supply chain Linux distribution for Microsoft first-party use, but people can go use it if they want to. So how do we go from running all of our infrastructure in Ubuntu to running it all on Mariner, and doing it in such a way that is transparent to users where they don't even notice that this is happening? And we go back to the analogy of, you know, changing the tires of a car that is going 60 miles an hour. And that's kind of like the interesting challenges. Yeah. There's differences in the kernel, and, you know, we're going from kernel 5.4 to kernel 5.5, and that impacts the CIFS driver, and we use the CIFS driver to mount the storage account. And, you know, it's going through that long tail of very complicated technical issues, and, you know, managing it while having zero impact on customers.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that setting up the whole infrastructure thing really sounds great, especially if you're just trying to prototype and do the development subscription and stuff you were talking about. Because, you know, most everything you said in that statement, I had no idea what you're talking about, because I'm not a network guy. I don't know about VNets, right. And I mean, I know about them, but don't let me do them, because I'll screw it up, right?
Yeah, and, you know, that is the value proposition of platform as a service.
Yeah.
Is focus on writing your code and let us take care of where it runs and how it runs, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think one of the best examples is remember Spectre and Meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
So those things happened, I'm going to say 3 years ago. And, you know, there's a point where the vulnerability is reported to Microsoft, and then Microsoft needs to generate a patch, and then the security vulnerability is disclosed.
Right.
So between the time when the patch is generated and the security vulnerability is disclosed, App Service and all of the services in Azure had to go and deploy the patch to production to every VM running across the planet, so that by the time the security disclosure came through, everything was already patched.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're on the platform as a service, we are taking care of that for you. If you're managing your VM, then you need to go do the Windows update, or like orchestrate the however you're going to do the update, and that's going to take time.
Yeah, are you listening, Equifax? Don't get me started about those guys. Because they were broken into because they weren't keeping their patches up, and they were warned about the patches, and they didn't do it. And
this happens all the time. Like we had to do the same thing for Log4j, and there was the dirty pipe.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Who's keeping track of all of these things? Like, why should you, a developer that is writing business code, being thinking about all of these other things, right?
Yeah.
And
you'd have to have a whole team at your company just worrying about that, right? Because they happen every day, right? This stuff happens every day. You're being attacked every day, and constantly. I want to know how the attacks on Microsoft every day. That's got to be insane, And that team there must be awesome to keep all that out. And just while it's on my mind, I think it's great that Microsoft is publicizing, attacks and things like that they found before anybody else did, right? I think that's a great thing that Microsoft is doing, is making people aware of that stuff, so we know, right? Because and unfortunately, budgets are tight and teams are small, and time is short, and it's impossible to worry about everything these days. Now, go back when I started, it was completely different, right? It wasn't near anywhere as difficult as it is now, but now it is just just a huge task to deal with if you have a big production site, used by millions of users and things like that. It's got to be mind-boggling. Sometimes I wish I could spend like a week at like Amazon, just learning how they architect their stuff so it doesn't go down, right? And how do they deploy their stuff so we don't ever notice, right? That to me is, I wish there were more talks about that. I know they probably don't want to tell anybody because it's their little proprietary secret, right? But I would love to know how they do that. I had on my show the cloud expert from Netflix, and he was just an amazing guest because just all the stuff they do there, to optimize Netflix, and so it's just pretty amazing. It's very different from when I started. When I started, we had mainly two OSs, right? Windows and Mac. That was it, for the most part, except for some mainframe stuff. And now it's like, it's crazy. So we're out of time. That was a great chat. I learned a lot, Byron. That was like, I definitely want to have you come back on the show whenever you want to talk about anything. Please feel free. You always have an open invitation. I was thinking about not saying this, but you're one of the smartest PMs I've talked to. It's refreshing to talk to a PM that actually knows what they're talking about.
Thank you. I'll definitely take the compliment.
You can tell your boss if you want. dotNetDave says I'm the best PM he's ever talked to.
Got it.
I know. I hold no weight at Microsoft. So anyway, the last two questions I always ask all my guests, and I know probably your answer to one of them, but I'll ask you anyway. Before I do that, you were saying about dyslexia. It reminded me of the joke I tell all the time. What's the sign of a great software engineer? You have dyslexia, you have ADD, and you can't spell. If you have those three things, you're going to be an awesome software engineer, right? Because we all have that.
That's basically, I fall into that bucket.
So anyway, so besides Azure and all that stuff you do, what do you do for fun?
Well, right now, fun is taking care of my 17-month-old kid.
Yeah.
He's a pandemic baby.
That is almost right.
But
Yeah.
like honestly, life changed so much for me with that, and I can't imagine doing it in the way the world used to be before the pandemic, where I wasn't working from home.
Yeah.
And so for me, being able to, be in the meeting, it ends 5 minutes early, and I can just run off and do a diaper change.
Yeah.
That is fulfilling beyond words. So
Yeah.
I'm enjoying every minute that I can do that right now.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that Microsoft is sticking with the hybrid mode and not forcing everybody to come back in the office like some big tech companies are.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad Microsoft is doing that. And it reminds me of the research they did at the early on in the pandemic when everybody was sent home, and they found out that they actually were getting more work done. And I've been screaming about this forever. That yes, this is why remote working works, right? And I'm not saying you should be remote all the time, but if you can be, especially during the times where you really need to concentrate and everything, remote work is the best. I mean, I get so much more work done at home than I ever do in the office. Like my productivity in the office is like 20 or 30% of what I can do here. I'm serious. It's the office for me is so distracting. And besides that, just the recirculated air and the no windows, and I live by the beach. I get nice ocean breezes, and my place is pretty lit up because I have no lights on in here except for my studio lighting stuff, and it's always bright in here. And
nice.
Anyway,
I wish I could balance it with doing like the business travel and talking at conferences and all of that. So, once we get into that place where we're back to normal in a way, but still being able to work from home and have that social interaction and going places and talking to people. And that's the part that I miss. Just being able to do that in the future. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, when I first started working from home, kind of like almost on a full-time basis, I was a single dad, and man, that was just awesome. Trying to be a single parent is horribly difficult, and the ability for me to be at home all the time. So whenever the kids came home or having to go to school meetings and things like that, that was just, I don't know how single parents do it without that.
Yeah.
Without working from home. I just don't know how they do it.
My hat goes off to anybody that is raising a child by themselves. I can't imagine doing it.
Yeah. And children change your life. They do. I mean, and in a positive way, I will, the two best days of my entire lifetime will always be the two days my two kids were born. Always. There's nothing can beat it. I don't care what it is. So, we've been plugging Azure App Service the whole time, but anything else you want to plug before I let you go?
I guess just keep an eye at build. That's usually when big stuff happens. And like just a reminder that we work on web apps, function apps, logic apps, container apps. So all of this is coming from the same core team of people. And, we talked a lot about App Service, but a lot of this is true for all of those services because they share the infrastructure, right? We're running all of this on top of the same compute substrate.
Yeah. Well, I unfortunately I have to let you go. I'd like to talk another hour, but that's the great thing about, I always love doing my own show. I guess when I don't love it is the time for me to quit. But so far, I love every one of my shows. So thank you so much for being on. And again, you're welcome to come back out on anytime you want. Just ping me and we'll set up a date anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for everybody at home watching.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So, that was an awesome episode, I think. I know. I learned a lot, and I had a great discussion with Byron, and I can't wait to have him back on the show. And I hope you all learned a lot from the show, too. that's why I do it. So I want to go back to slides, Simon. So as every week, everybody wins a free copy of CodeRush from DevExpress. CodeRush is the refactoring tool I've always used in Visual Studio, and you can get your very own free copy. It's a licensed real copy of DevExpress by just going to devexpress.com/dotNetDave. I use it every day that I code, and it teaches me things too. So go pick one up. I'm doing a Twitter poll right now. That's why I put the link there. If you want to participate, I'm asking people just how far back in the .NET stack are they? Are they still using .NET Framework, .NET Core, .NET 5, .NET 6? Those are the results as of this morning. So I hope you go participate. I'm interested on just what versions of .NET you guys are on. I think you all should be on 6, but I'm interested because I know we all have legacy code. You know, my new company has code that's like 20 years old. So I'm curious about that. So I hope you go participate in my poll. Oh, and also don't forget to pick up a copy of my coding standards book. Everybody needs coding standards. Unfortunately, I see standards going down, down, down. And my goal with my book, of course, which is the only pure .NET coding standards book out there, is to make sure teams have good coding standards in their at their company. So I hope you pick up a copy. Also, as you all know, I'm always raising money for the NGO orphanage that I visited in Delhi in 2019. I just checked this morning. No one's donated in 3 months. So come on, people. Please help me help the kids in India in the slums by going to that URL and donating as much as you can. Or if you just go to the Voice of Slum website, you can purchase things for the kids there. And also, if you buy a copy of my Code Performance book, all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds goes to the Voice of Slum. So I hope you'll help me help the kids, you know, because of the money that I've been able to raise for the orphanage. They've been able to restart their vocational training for young women. So I'm very happy about that. And I can't wait to go to India later this year to see how things are going there at the Voice of Slum. So I hope you help me help the kids. All right, thanks for watching. Next week, I have Paul Michaels. He's a Microsoft MVP, and we're going to be talking about software architecture. And also, something I found interesting to talk about, meetups in the post-pandemic world, now that we're all getting back to doing more in-person things these days. So I hope you join me next week. We'll be off a couple weeks after that, I think, because of Simon's schedule. So come back next week. Also, please be safe. COVID. I know Simon has been telling me that COVID is not going good now in Delhi and maybe all of India. And so, you know, when COVID is not going good in other countries, that usually means it's going to come here next. And I already, based on the news this morning, I already see some bad signs that our COVID rates are going up and also deaths. So please be safe. Please wear your mask if you need to. And please donate blood to your local blood bank. All the blood banks are in shortage all the time. And so they need your blood. One donation can help 3 people. It doesn't take much time. It takes like a half an hour, 45 minutes. It's free, and it makes you feel better about helping your fellow human. And guys or girls, if you want to get out of yard work and stuff like that on the weekend, do it on the weekend, because you can't do that for 24 hours. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. I had a great show with Byron. I hope you'll email me suggestions or comments to Rockin The Code World at C# Corner. And with that, I'll see you next week, geeks.